Welcome back to forchildren.ca's series of conversations. Today we'll be speaking with Stephanie about the impact the collaborative and proactive solutions model had on her family and professional life. Hi there, Stephanie and Jeanie. Good morning. Stephanie, I'd like to ask you what the impact of seeing Dr. Greene and sharing his collaborative and proactive solutions model was for you and your family.
Thank you. Good morning, Cece. When I first saw him, when you brought him into Powell River in 2011, my daughter was, Jeanie here was 13. And we had struggled for a lot of years. And I, at that time, had been a teacher for 2011, quite a while. And I had gone to lots of conferences, any Pro-D activities that I had the opportunity to go to. I was searching for ways to sort of make things easier for Jeanie, because what I had known innately as a parent and what I had learned as an educator wasn't working. There was times where I could just tell that it wasn't working for her. And at different points in her life, I read a book once called What to Do When Your Children Won't Listen, or something like that. And it was very, very strong on immediate consequences that were well known. And, I could just see in her when we were doing that it was like pouring oil on a fire. So as we would get to the known consequence that was going to be coming, she couldn't handle that, knowing that was coming. So that would just make it way worse for her. And so that first time that I saw him, when I first heard him speaking, and he said, I think it's in the very first paragraph of the book, The Explosive Child, something about parents that I think often I felt like I was being accused of being too permissive. It was because I wasn't being strong enough with those consequences that she was struggling with, the issues that she was having. And that didn't sit with me. Like, I didn't think that was the case. And so that first day and listening to him, I was just like, he knows exactly what my child is going through, and he has some solutions. So I had gone to a lot of conferences, and I had heard a lot about developmental psychology, and that they're in, and listened to a lot of people that were really great, but they were all talking about if you had done this since birth. And so for me, I hadn't been doing sort of a developmental sort of program with her since birth. I had done all these other things that I had tried. So it was the first time that I felt that I had encountered someone who had some tools for me right now, and having not done those things all the way along. And so I came home from the conference and decided to try the I think collaborative problem solving at the time, but it's a new term now. So model. And so we went through the paperwork and we sat at the table, and the biggest issue that we were having at the time was we live quite a ways out of town, half an hour away from town. And so for her, she had lots of activities. She was in soccer and music, and we often had to get her stuff ready so that I could drive to town and pick her up and then go straight to her activities. So we would have a fight all the time about getting her stuff ready. Where's your soccer stuff? Where's your fiddle? Where these things? And so that first time we went through the paperwork, I said, so I'm concerned that when I, ask you to get your stuff ready, you get really upset and you don't want to do it. What's up? And she said to me, she said, well, it's stupid. It's a waste of time. And you're telling me what to do. And I went, oh, okay. Well, what do you suggest? What can we maybe try instead? And she said, it was like the most profound thing. She says, well, you could ask me. I said, okay. How easy is that? So that's what we did. And I really felt like, and I've told this story so many times, I just think like, in the mornings, so I'd ask her at night, do you want to get your stuff ready tonight? And she'd say yes or no. and that would be it. And if she didn't do it, then she would have to do it in the morning, and that's when it's rushy and she has to get out to a school bus by a certain time. And so in the morning, she had chosen not to do it the night before. The difference after we had done that process was, I feel like she would sooner bite her tongue off than say anything about it being a problem for her to get it together in the morning, because she had chosen to do it in the morning instead of me making her do it in the morning.
My dignity and I had to hold on to that, my pride.
And we had a deal.
Yeah,
It's that thing that we had a plan B. We had a plan in place. And so we actually only ever did it twice. We only went through the actual paperwork twice, but in doing it those 2 times, then we just sort of developed that kind of a conversation. And so for a lot of people around us, they're like, what? No consequences? My husband, dad had a hard time at first, didn't he? He did not get that. He's like, well, but she's just going to run amok entirely if you have no consequences. And I said, no, I don't think so. I think that, and then based on that first experience, we really, that fixed that problem. And that whole thing about picking the top 1 or 2 problems that you're having, and dealing with those, and then that gives you more resilience for the ones that occur less frequently. It was just amazing for us. The other one, do you remember the other one, was the when we would go to town and we'd have to run errands. So because we live out of town as well, when we go to town, we have to go to the grocery store, the post office, this place, that, they pick things up, drop things off. And she would, it felt like to me that she would, know we're approaching the parking lot. And right at that moment, she would start doing something like take her shoes off because she doesn't feel like wearing them now or something. And I'd be like, we need to hurry. And so she was old enough at the time that I would say to her, okay, it's really hard for me when I get there and I'm in a hurry and I want to do these things. So what I'm going to do with you now is I will leave you the keys. I will leave you the keys. So when I park, I'm going to leave you the keys. If you're ready to go when I get out of the car, then you can come. If not, you will just come when you're ready. And she's a bit funny. So like, there's lots of times, I'm coming. Like she didn't want to be left behind. But other times she was like, no, that's okay. I'll take the keys. And then she would come and find me in the store.
Yeah, definitely. I remember that.
Yeah. So I think those are only 2 ones that we actually went through all the paperwork, but then we just sort of used that process.
It just became part of our communication, I think, because it worked. Yeah.
So I tell those stories to so many of the parents in our program. I can recognize kids that are having those same struggles. I'm like, oh, I recognize that kid, and recognize what's going on for them, and can talk to their parents about it and tell them about his book. And it's been amazing for us. It was a game changer, for life changer for both of us.
Definitely.
Yes. I remember you telling me that, Stephanie, that it had been a life changer. So I often use that to share your story with others, that it was a life changer. But Stephanie, how did you feel? I'm thinking you felt heard.
Yes. Oh my gosh. As a parent, I felt like, because I had 2 children, and I had the first child didn't have those same things. And that was one of the big things for me, is that, so my son had trouble with learning disabilities. And so I knew that, kids develop at different rates for their ability to read and write. And so I was taught that in school. I knew about that. I knew how to help him, those kind of things. But I never, ever had been taught that kids would have differing abilities, like emotional ability to take no for an answer. Like it had never occurred to me before. So hearing that from him was like, of course, that's exactly what's going on for her. Like, yeah.
So sharing a bit, you've obviously shared what happened with your own family and with Jeanie here. How did it impact you in your work? We haven't shared what it is that you actually do. So how did that make changes in how
my work. So yeah, now I'm the principal of the Partners in Education program out of Powell River, and we have about 1,400 students now. And there are times where we have parents that are struggling, and we know I can recognize what it is they're struggling with. And so many times I have told this story. Like, I would say I tell it several times a year, every year. And so hopefully that's okay with you. I think it is, because
it is
she did
definitely.
come and share. But with our families, I've asked her often. I've shared the letter that Jeanie wrote. I think she's going to talk about in a minute, but shared that with our parents. And that's that same thing, that they feel heard, and they feel like, because you feel like a failure, you feel like if you can't help your child manage their emotions in a productive way, then and fighting, like, and that whole thing of, I just remember the times just seeing her, and I would know that if I implement this consequence that I've told her is going to happen, that it's going to make her lose her mind entirely, and there will be screaming, and she will be so upset. That was the thing. I didn't want her to be so upset, but it was that whole thing about, if you're being too permissive, so you have to be hard line with the consequence. She has to know what the consequences are going to be, and all of that stuff. And oh my goodness, when he talked about the school to prison pipeline, as an educator, that just hurts my heart. Like, I want every principal I know and every teacher I know to know about him and his work, and that there are the other thing as a principal as well, is that when he said that we punish the kids that are doing things wrong as an example to the other children who are not doing things wrong, and it's those same kids that keep ending up in the principal's office, then it's not working. Like, people, this is not working. And then those are the kids that get so turned off. And I feel like I gravitate to those kids, always have anyways. And so now to have this even more so it helps me in my work with relating to the students, with relating to the parents, and with giving them some information that can hopefully help them as well.
Yeah, I hear that. It's such a strong message, and to be
Yeah.
able to share it, especially when it's experiential to you as a parent, to be able to share it is just phenomenal. Now, you say Stephanie has a letter.
Jeanie, yeah.
Did you? Yes. I
Jeanie,
do.
sorry.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, Stephanie did have the letter. Yeah. So Jeanie, would you like to share that with us?
Yeah, absolutely. It kind of just gives an example, and it sort of discusses my experience. And I think that I guess in writing this, and then in this experience, I just didn't realize that my experience was relatable at all. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. So yeah, I'll just read it out here. So when I was young, from the ages of 2 to 13, my mind was developing in an unpleasant way. Obviously, then it was harder for me to understand and accept certain things than it is now. The most significant thing I had trouble understanding was the word no. It seems somewhat simple, I know. I mean, what child doesn't have a fit or some sort of defined behavior when their mom or dad tells them they can't have something they were so fixed on getting, right? But for me, it was a little different. It was so much more than that to me, and it was something I didn't understand then. I never knew why I got so angry and so confused, and I hated being so upset about something so little, to the point of breaking things, hurting people, and emotionally hurting myself. I thought, why? Why is it so hard for me to just accept what is? Quite frankly, I thought I was just an awful person, or that I was selfish, and I knew I must seem spoiled to others. This made me very self-conscious, but for some part of me, I knew I wasn't really that person. I just had no way of expressing what was going on. One day when I was probably 5 years old, I was in the store with my mom and dad, like any other day, going grocery shopping. As I followed closely behind, I watched carts whizzing by, people with their families, people on their own, or young couples, all there for the same reason. We turned the corner into the freezer section, and that's when I saw the ice cream. Man, did I want some of that. I tugged on my mom's shirt and asked nicely as I could if we could get some. She replied with a sigh and explained to me that we had other things to do in town before we could go home, so it would melt. I said, please, 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 Mom. And I just lost my, it will be fine. Even though I knew fairly well it would. But I kept asking and hoping she would change her mind, agitating her more and more. All of a sudden, the muscles in her face tensed. She turned, she bent down to me, and she very firmly said no. This set my insides arage, a twisting and turning feeling that made me want to scream. I slumped to the floor, mad as ever. I just wanted some ice cream. My dad picked me up and I started to scream. I thrashed and I tried to get away, but got nowhere. Again, I watched the people with their families, people on their own, or young couples, but this time they were looking at me, looking at this freak of a child being carried out of the store screaming when I was 5 years old. When I got in the car, all I could think was, why? Why did I just completely embarrass myself and my parents over something so stupid? It was just ice cream. It was late on a weekday when my mom came home from a conference in Powell River, when we had a very memorable discussion. She went to a conference where a man named Dr Greene spoke about a certain type of child, one that sounded like me. As she was telling me about what he said, it was when she quoted him that I had this huge sense of relief. I finally felt like a fish being put into water after striving to breathe for so long. I felt like this was something I could understand, a different way of thinking that brought my life to light. Now somebody understood how I felt. And it was when she said, kids will do well if they can, that I finally felt free of these invisible chains of anger and frustration. I realized that I wasn't the only one. I realized if he knew how I felt, then I must not be the only kid out there with this problem, I guess. Really, it's not a problem, maybe a disadvantage with certain things, but I know now it's not because I'm selfish. I'm a selfish, spoiled little brat who doesn't have any control when something goes my way. I just have trouble switching gears and changing plans when it's abrupt. My brain needs more time to adjust, reconsider, and accept the facts, and maybe a little more time than others. Now I can recognize when this happens and develop a solution. I think of Ross Greene almost every day, and I mentally thank him for giving me the explanation that I needed. So that was, I wrote that letter, and it was really a turning point for both me and my mom. When she explained all this stuff to me, like I said, it was like so crazy to me that I could relate to something, and it had taken, but it's crazy that it had taken that long, like 13 years of my life to find something that I could relate to. And I think especially like the scrutiny that both of us suffered was like crazy. Like people making judgments like I had my friends' parents saying, oh, well, if my kid did that, I just spank them, or I just, they don't disobey me like that. And I just never understood, because I was like, well, my mom could do that, but it wouldn't change anything for me. It'd probably just make it a lot worse. Like she could send me to boarding school for all I care. And like, it wouldn't make a difference in how my behavior was changing. My behavior would be the same, because I didn't care about the consequences at all. Actually, I knew that consequences were coming, and I got so angry to a point where I didn't care what happened to me. And all I cared about when I was that angry was that other people, that's where the hurting other people came in, because I wanted them to experience the same rage I was feeling, because I felt it was unfair for me to be this angry, and you should be as angry as I am because you caused me to be angry. It was vengeful, and so
it was a hard few years.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was. And, you know, hearing you put it in so articulately in your letter,
Hmm.
kind of to Dr. Greene,
Hmm.
when Stephanie, your mom told me about it, I had to share that with Dr.
Yeah.
Greene. And, you know, I asked if it was okay ahead of time, but he was thrilled to hear that and would have liked to have talked to you. So what happened after that?
Yeah. So we actually got the opportunity to meet Ross Greene at the sort of the seminar that he was doing, conference. I remember being nervous, but really excited. And being there was a really eye-opening. And then I got to meet him in person and actually shake his hand and hear his voice, and it just sort of solidified, like, okay, this is, it sounds kind of weird, but this is a real person that
Yeah.
really does, like, is actually devoting his research and his life to a certain type of behavior, and that is helping me, like that is making a difference. So yeah, it made a huge difference for me, and it was very nice to be able to meet him in person
and say thank you in person.
exactly. Yeah, exactly, and say thank you.
Both of
It
us,
was like, like it just changes the whole way you look at an angry child. I see it now all the time too. I'm not around children so much, but I even see it sometimes, like just kids in public, like with their parents, and I just have that little light that goes on, just sort of takes me right back to me as a child in that moment. And it was really sad for me. I don't know that people understand how emotionally taxing it is to become so out of control of your emotions, because that whole thing is just recovering from being out of control, like with your emotions, is a huge thing. And as a young child, it's even harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful story, and I share it often.
Yeah.
But to actually have the two of you here talking about your experience is phenomenal. And knowing, because it's not very often I get to see children as adults that have,
Yeah.
their parents have, introduced this model to you. So how is it helping you as an adult?
Yeah. So sorry. My cat is trying to make an appearance. So as an adult, I feel like I now have the tools to sort of navigate those maybe episodes where I feel like I'm losing control. And sometimes I still lose control, like, and I get totally angry and like, but I feel like I'm not as hard on myself anymore, because one, like when I can like navigate through it and I can be like, okay, this situation is just coming up over and over and over again, and it's causing so much anger and discomfort and all these things, like I can collaborate, I can problem solve myself, like I can find a new way to do things that doesn't cause frustration so much. And then again, if I do lose my temper and if I am so angry, I still have to emotionally recover from it, because I don't like being angry. Like I'll do anything in my power to not get angry. But if I do sort of lose my temper, like I said, I'm not as hard on myself. I can recover and not beat myself up as much.
And you can advocate for yourself. Like that's what I think she's learned in this process, to advocate, so she can let people know that I sometimes have trouble when things change abruptly. If I have, and I always describe that it's like she's on a train track and things are laid out in a certain way, and she is very organized to make sure that she doesn't have things that sort of throw her off. And so when someone says, okay, that now this has to change, that's difficult for her. So if she can tell her employers or people around her, that is difficult for her, and they know that ahead of time, then she can, you know, use that model with them as well.
Yeah, it's a level of awareness that makes a huge difference.
Right.
Being aware of my behavior and just doing
what's difficult for you.
Yeah, and what's just inherently difficult for me, and then knowing that there are things that there are habits that I can change, and there are things that I can do to make that easier on myself.
I think one of the greatest things about getting her to come that day to see Dr. Greene was when we were in the audience, and when he first started talking, and the things that were so impactful for me the first time I had seen him, getting her, seeing her, hearing those things, like, see, I wasn't making it up, or like, look, like this, he really understands you. And yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah. That was, yeah, that must have been quite a treat for you both to be there.
Oh yeah.
And hear him together. But I can't thank you enough for sharing this with us today, because hearing mom's perspective, hearing the child's perspective, and the child, you know, transitioning into adulthood is phenomenal. Because I think when people hear it, there is a way for them. They may not have heard of Dr. Greene, but actually having that, listening to your experience and seeing the results is going to help so many people. So I really thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy
It's great to see you again.
Yeah, happy to share.
It's great to see you too.